Hi, everybody. I'm Emily D. Simone with the Garden State Film Festival, and here with me today I have Nanak McCann. He is the director and writer of A Rosary and a Diamond Ring. Nanak, how are you today?
I'm great. Great to be here, Emily.
Great to have you. So, before
Yeah.
I dive into asking you questions about your film, would you like to tell our live viewers a bit about the film?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a film that I wrote little before COVID, and then we cast it during COVID, which was a fun experience. We were all home, so I got to kind of take a lot of time to look at a bunch of different actors. And it's a film about two soldiers who come home from Vietnam in 1972, and it's about sort of a 24-hour, 30-hour period of adjusting to realizing they actually kind of made it out, and sort of realizing that they have some kind of scars to deal with. And the kind of main protagonist, Joe, goes home to his mother, and they kind of reconnect, amidst like kind of difficulties kind of within him from all the things he just saw. Yeah.
So, what is it about, the war, I guess, that really inspired you to write about it? Do you have any personal connections to it? Familial?
Yeah. So my father is a Vietnam veteran, and he's uh, fully disabled, or he's listed as disabled, and so that's something I kind of grew up around. It was always sort of passionate about, and then he kind of had the kind of these pseudo uncles and this kind of community of veterans that I was always around, and so it's sort of inspired by a true story. Like there's a real Joe and there's a real Butch, and there's kind of this story about this rosary chain that Joe gives to Butch, like when they leave each other when they first get home. And that was a real story where my father had given this necklace to Butch, and then they didn't see each other for 8 years. And when they saw each other again, Butch had it and he gave it back. And it became this thing they passed back and forth to each other over the course of like a 40-year friendship. So it's kind of
I
cool.
would like to thank him for his service. I
Yeah,
guess
thank you.
half of the Garden State. So you said that you cast right before COVID. So how did COVID affect
Well,
everything?
we cast actually during COVID. So I wrote it before COVID, and then during COVID, we did the casting call, and it was just everyone submitted online. I was just watching like kind of hundreds of videos because we all had time, and so it was actually kind of in a weird way, it was sort of a nice time to be doing it because you couldn't really leave your house. So it was sort of a nice thing to just like be doing something productive and get to look at all these actors. And I think I got more submissions than you might normally get from a short film because actors were all home, and so
Mhm.
I got a lot of really good auditions, which made for some hard choices. Yeah.
What was your favorite part about this film, like about filming and everything when it like when I apologize. What was your favorite part in the creation of?
Yeah, I mean, I like it all. I think probably my favorite part is, I kind of I think of myself as a writer first, but I started off as an actor, and so what I really like is sort of when I've been kind of working with my script for however many period of time, sometimes years, and then when you get to working with the actors and you start rehearsing it, and they bring their ideas, and then like when you get to set, what I really like to do is sort of like in acting, you had this sort of the moment before, and on set, I like to let the actors sort of act out that moment before and then kind of find the scene. So that's something I'll say is like, just kind of act out whatever you want naturally. And then when it feels right, get into the scene. And so it's really nice to see sort of what the actors change the film into. Sometimes the things that they improvise make it into the final edit more than what you wrote. And so it's really interesting to sort of just embrace that process of like the actors turning your writing into something else.
So what is your history with filmmaking and whatnot? Is this your first film?
No, this is my second film as a director, and maybe like my 10th script. I moved down to Los Angeles I don't know how many years ago, over 10 years ago, and I kind of started off acting, and then I got hired as a production assistant at a production office and did that for a few years, and then started working on set as a production assistant, and eventually started working in set design. And so I worked as like a set designer and a PA for about 8 years on commercial and movies and TV. And then I kind of transitioned to writing and got hired to work with a company called Streetlight Films at Paul Street. He's kind of a well-known commercial director, and we wrote a number of scripts together. One of them got made into a feature called Borderland, and then a couple of other things that I've written with other directors that have had different levels of success. I'm proud of. Yeah,
But that's fantastic.
yeah.
That's so cool. Is this your first submission with Garden State?
No, I actually had a film screen there called Pond back in 2010, I think. And that was the first thing I ever wrote. I actually acted in that one. I didn't direct it, but it was I sort of produced it and acted and wrote it. And so it was
Oh,
like my first baby, if you will.
oh, welcome back. It's awesome
Yeah,
to have
yeah,
you.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So,
So,
yeah, as I
oh,
said,
sorry.
New Jersey sort of has a little bit of a special place in my heart. It's my mother's kind of hometown. She's from South Orange, and I have family there, so I'm really excited for the festival. And, my relatives will get to come, and all my relatives are actually New Jersey, Philadelphia, and some in New York. Yeah,
So you will be coming?
I will be coming. Yeah, yeah,
Good,
definitely.
good, good. So
Yeah.
with this film, when did you end up filming?
So we filmed in May of 2021. So it was a little while ago. Yeah. And then we sort of just missed the editing sort of missed the submission for last year. And so this is kind of our festival run now. Yeah. So and it was kind of okay because I wrote it really as like a part one of a feature that I'm kind of trying to get made now. And so it kind of gave me time to finish the other parts and sort of get prepared to sort of try to launch the whole thing. Yeah.
Can you give
So,
us like a little like sneak peek into what your ideas are for that second
yeah.
film?
So what I wanted to do is, it's called a Rosary and a Diamond Ring. And so it's this story about this rosary chain that kind of gets passed back and forth between these two soldiers and these best friends over the course of like 4 decades or 3 decades. And so the idea is in the first one, we see the character Joe pass off this rosary necklace his mother gave him to protect him in the war and pass it off to Butch as like a token of friendship and say like, we'll see each other again. And so that's then Joe goes home to his mother, and that's what we see in the film, and they kind of deal with his war trauma, and then that ends, and then part two picks up 8 years later, and Joe is married and he's got a kid, and he's sort of having marital problems, and Butch is like a newlywed, and his wife's pregnant, and they're really happy, and they kind of meet over dinner over at Butch's house, and they kind of talk, and we catch up and see what these characters are going through, and then eventually Butch gives the necklace back. And then there's kind of a whole thing where, he gives him some advice on, trying to, get his wife back, if you will. And then, whatever happens, happens. And then kind of part three takes up 10 years later. And then part four, 10 years later. And so it's kind of like this idea where you kind of drop in on the characters every 10 years and sort of catch up with them. So there's a couple other movies that I was sort of inspired by, like I kind of strangely, like when Harry Met Sally kind of does that,
Mhm.
you catch up with the characters every 5 years and you kind of see where they're at. And so it's kind of a fun way to do a film where you kind of, the audience gets to kind of through dialogue, figure out what's going on in these guys' lives.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think that that's a fantastic concept. So you're saying that this is going to be like a four-part.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah. And so that way we kind of get to show like the friendship and then the transition of time. And the idea that I had is these characters that are sort of different in a lot of ways. And they're having very, very different life experiences, but they're like kind of friendship pulls them together. And kind of with the characters being kind of, going through these decades of different changes, the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the way that they kind of experience that differently, and then there's the African American element, so we can kind of show the way that they're kind of experiencing the changing cultures and how that affects their lives is
Mhm.
kind of, I thought was an interesting thing to do.
No, that sounds fantastic. So this is part one of
Yes.
four. Okay,
Yes.
that's so exciting. I love
Yeah. Yeah.
it. So, with COVID, as you said you were filming in 2021, did that bring any like,
It was,
difficult?
it was yeah, it was difficult. I'm sure some of the other filmmakers experienced it as well. I mean, we had to do the whole thing. Everyone's wearing masks, of course, and then we had to hire a COVID safety officer to make sure everyone was tested. And there was sort of that, that risky part, of course, of people getting exposed to COVID, but then there was also the risky part of if anyone tested positive the morning of, we would have to shut down and reschedule the whole thing. And so that's always difficult because you've already, rented out everything and hired crew and stuff. And so we definitely had, someone kind of watching over us because it all worked out smoothly. So, that was great. But it was definitely, it was a process. Yeah.
No, I mean, like I've been listening to different filmmakers talk about like how their experiences with COVID were different. So this is the first time I'm hearing, because it sounds like you're saying you're renting a space and you have
Yeah.
like a larger crew, and that if someone tested positive, you'd have to shut down for the day. And it's without a better word I can think of, crazy to think about how COVID did affect
Yeah,
everything.
one experience we had, we got pretty lucky. We did have like day one of shooting. It was only a 2-day shoot. Day one of shooting, we started about 2 hours late because our makeup artist was waiting for her test result to come back, and so we were kind of like, she got it back that morning, and then she was like rushing over, and it ended up working out great. But it was definitely, it's just one of those things where everything had to kind of come together. So.
I mean, I'm glad that everything, worked out. And so now you're here with the Garden State Film Festival. How does it feel to be accepted?
It feels great. It feels great. I mean, it was one of my target places because of the family connection, and how much I love New Jersey. It was one I knew I would go to, and obviously getting into a film festival is always amazing, but it gives you an excuse to visit your family, and they can all come and kind of see the film together. And so, yeah, very, very, very excited for sure.
With all of this, it sounds like you have a good amount of experience doing this. Do you have advice for other filmmakers that don't have as much experience as you have?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of advice I could give. I think the best advice that I ever got, that I think is good for all filmmakers, if you can achieve it, is I think you have to just look at it as like a long-term process. That's kind of what I try to do. And one filmmaker kind of had a path or a plan of just trying to make, like, if you're starting out, trying to make like a short film like every year, every 2 years, and just kind of keep on doing it and keep on doing it, because you learn so much from the whole process of going to these festivals. When you make a movie, you have to write it, you have to edit it. I mean, yeah, you have to cast it and make it, and then you edit, and you learn all these things when you're editing a film, and then you have to hire a colorist and all these other things. And then when you submit to the festivals, you go to these festivals and you learn what they need, and you learn about the market, and you build relationships with these festivals, and then your next film, you have a relationship with the showrunners, and you can, what they're looking for, and sometimes you'll have contacts with people working at the festival, and it's a building process. And so you can't, we all want it to happen all at once, right? But I think if you kind of just keep pushing forward, that's a big lesson. And I think the thing that I've learned is, like, there's a ripple effect to the things you make. A lot of times you'll do something and you'll say, man, that didn't like blow up my career the way that I thought it did. And then like a year or two later, someone that saw that film will just kind of be like, oh yeah, I liked that film. I'm actually looking for a writer. Send me what you have, because I think what it really does is it changes the way people view you. It's not like, oh, I have to work with that person, but they now are like, oh, I respect that person, and I want to work with them. And then when something comes along, they think of you, so.
No, I mean, like these festivals are a great way to network.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, like,
Absolutely.
I've been networking and seeing like how the people I work with are networking, and it's really a fantastic,
Yeah.
I want to say breeding ground, but breeding ground for creativity and new projects in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I would think even to add to that, I think sometimes we don't think about it at the time of, like, the people that might be the most important to your career might be the other filmmakers you meet at these festivals. My experience is the people that have, like, I've built, my career with, are the people that I was working as a PA with 10 years ago, but now their careers have blossomed, and we're all in different places. And then you kind of do things together, and so you meet some young filmmaker at a film festival like Garden State, and you have a great connection, and you stay friends. And 3 or 4 years later, you might both be in like these great different places and be able to kind of help each other with projects or make a project together.
Well, Nanak, thank you so much for taking this time with me today to talk about your film. Guys,
Yeah,
you can see Rosary and a Diamond Ring on Saturday. from 8:45 to 11 at the Berkeley Continental. Nanak, again, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time as well, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Yeah.